Hello again, and welcome back to Educator.com's Advanced PHP with MySQL course. In today's lesson, we're going to be learning how to upload files using the HTTP POST method. The first thing we're going to talk about is something known as post data encoding, which describes how the data that you submit from an HTML form using the POST method is encoded before it's sent to the web server so that the web server knows how to interpret it. We're actually going to go through the process of uploading some files, and then we're going to talk about what's known as the files superglobal, and basically that's PHP that's the way to access information about uploaded files from your PHP code. Our post data we've been accessing using the post superglobal, so we're still going to use that to access general post variable name value pairs, but for file uploads we're going to be using this new superglobal. And then additionally we're going to talk about once you've uploaded a file on an HTML form, how in your PHP script you can move that to a location that you want to, because when files are uploaded, they're uploaded to a temporary directory. So basically when the post method is used to submit an HTML form, data is encoded by default using URL encoding. We talked a little bit about that in our lesson on our review on HTTP, where we introduced the post method. So basically, when you use the post method to submit a form, it creates, as we learned in our HTTP lesson, there's a header of the HTTP that describes that it's using the post method. It tells a little bit about what the content is. There's a blank line, and then there's the body of that HTTP request, which contains the data that you're submitting on the form. Well, that data by default follows this content type called application slash, and this sort of long phrase here, which basically says it's URL encoded data. And actually, if we go and look at, for example, a form we're going to be working with today called enctype.html, which refers to encoding type, it's a form that is going to allow you to just basically submit a first name and a last name. Here we've explicitly set the encoding to this URL encoded form, but if we left it out by default, that would be the default. And so if we actually go ahead and submit the form, and we use our Firebug add-on to see what the post data looks like, and in this case we're just posting the data to the same file, enctype.html. If we look at our post data, we can see that here the data we supplied was URL encoded. Hopefully you can see that's a little bit small, and it says the content type was application slash x www form URL encoded. So that's the standard encoding for data submitted by a HTML form using post. However, when we want to upload a file, you need to change that encoding. You need to use a different type of encoding, and the content type and the encoding that you're going to be using is something called multipart form data. And the way that you do that is by setting the enctype attribute of your HTML form tag. So if we go back and look at enctype.html, when we scroll over here, we can see that it was set to this URL encoding, which is the default anyways. And if we change it to multipart form data, we're going to see that when we submit this form, even though we're not doing a file upload here, we're going to take a look at what the how that data is encoded in the body of our post request. So if we go ahead and run the same form again, actually let me have to refresh it so that it updates with the new encoding type. We go ahead and submit the query, and if we look at our post data, we can see that it's very different. Whereas before, and actually let me open up a second window so we can compare them. Just get rid of this so it goes to the default. So in the old way, our post data was formatted in this URL encoded method down here. Well, in the new method using the multipart form data, what it actually does is it sets the content type to multipart form data, and then it has our data that we submitted basically encoded in a different way. Here you can see that it's saying that we've submitted a variable called first name. The value of it is Matthew. The last name, we have a variable named last name. We're submitting the value for that Makaj. And basically the way that this works is it basically, for each input element that you have on a form that you submit, when you submit it using multipart form data as the encoding, it basically defines this string known as a boundary, and basically in between it creates a boundary, and in between each boundary it has the information about each input element that was submitted. So here we have first name and last name. It's not really important how that encoding works. The browser does it for you, and PHP knows how to interpret that and understand it. But just to give you an idea of what's going on sort of behind the scenes when you use this multipart form data, which is what we're going to be using for uploading files.